Hello everyone, welcome back to the Morbid Tales series. Today we'll be reading The Silhouette. Just so you all know, I will not be doing The Unbeliever, mainly because of language purposes. There's just quite a bit of swearing in there, and I would read it because I think that the story is wonderful, but I would suggest that you read it on your own because I am unable to, because I don't want any swearing content on my channel. So I hope that you will understand, and for this, please consider subscribing, and please leave a like and a comment below, and it will be very much appreciated. We'll just get right into this. The Silhouette. Amy was crying. In the familiar, comfortable, dark solace of her room, surrounded by her loyal horde of teddy bears and plushies. She cried and held her stomach in both hands, trying and failing at stopping the pain that throbbed like a malicious tumor. A malignant tumor emanating agony to her extremities. A circle of burnt flesh on her forearm throbbed a different kind of pain, like a knife gutted deep into a pig's side while it squealed its last. This was Rager's doing, her stepfather. This was not the first time he had snuffed out a cigarette on her body, but this was the most painful time. Kids her age deserved wonderment, deserved discovery, not darkness. But, sadly, that's not how the world worked. Sadistic stepfathers snuffed out their cigarettes on little girls' arms. Boys were bullied, wedgied, and had their heads dunked in toilets. And evil men hunted for young'uns in alleyways, in between building nooks, in abandoned parking lots. That's how the world worked, and he did not give a crap what you thought was right or wrong. Amy was wronged. Patricia McKean and her brigade had mocked, kicked, pushed, and punched Amy in the school shower room earlier. Said they didn't like the look on her face. Said she was not ever going to be a cheerleader, and if she tried going behind their backs to put her name up for tryouts, they'd kill her. And later, Patricia's butt pimple of a boyfriend had chased Amy to her home with his bulldog at her heels. She had tripped, grazed her knee, gotten her ankles bit by the manic dog, and none of the grown-ups were there to help her, to pull her out from this middle school horror that was her life on repeat. Outside her room, her stepfather, was yelling at her mom, grabbing her by her hair and throwing her around like a middle-aged rag doll. Her mother was not free of fault either. She roused him, poked at him until he snapped. She knew how easy he snapped. Part of Amy believed that her mother wanted that pain inflicted upon her. Sometimes, Amy thought she heard a pleasurable moan coming from her mom in the middle of those frequent fights. Once she had seen them both fight each other, and as the violent banter reached its pinnacle, both began violently kissing each other and taking their clothes off right in front of Amy. They went to their room, and through the paper-thin walls of her house, Amy heard that familiar creak, creak, creak of a bed. What did they do, the grown-ups, in their rooms? She had asked her friend, Alice, a day before her 11th birthday. Mommy told me that they jump up and down in the bed, all playful-like, and pray to heaven for the storks to drop babies through the window. Alice had said that with childish conviction that fades as you grow older. But tonight, her mother and father did not pray to heaven's storks. This time, the fight worsened, and Amy heard the clatter and shatter of plates, coffee cups, and then a big one, the crashing din of the cutlery closet in the kitchen. The terror was real, the world was bad, and her parents were no different. There was no Santa, no tooth fairy, only her teddy bears, and that shadow which stood in the darkest corner of her room. Amy had seen the silhouette a good 15 minutes ago. Part of the reason she was sobbing in paralysis, surrounded by her troops of toys as her last line of defense. But it was there, the haunter of the dark, with his yellow eyes and a smile that shone like a butcher's curved cleaver. "Child," a whisper ran through the room, and with it a shiver down Amy's spine. The silhouette had spoken. It stood there, watchful, counting her grape-like tears as each one trickled, assessing her. And now it had spoken. He had spoken. It was the voice of a man. In that there was no doubt. But it was the voice of a comforting man. There, kid kind of man. And yet he was so dark. An ethereal entity draped in black shrouds of smoke and gloom. "Child, it's he," said again. She wiped her hands across her face, covering her cheeks with salt water, knuckled her fists over her eyes in that "I don't believe what I'm seeing" gesture that cartoon characters do, and stared aghast at the ghost, the silhouette, the shadow man. "Child," a wispy sneer. "Child, in the dark place I come to you." Words ran together in an insidious melody. "Do you serve the dark?" the girl asked, with no control over the words that left her mouth. "Do you serve the dark? Whatever did that mean?" "Child." "My name's Amy." This time the voice and the words were her own. "Amy," the shadow monster said. "Amy, to you the dark has come. For if not Moses came to the mountain came to him." The surreal banter, a stupid talk that now she was a part of, made her forget her pain, her fitfulness, for a minute. The malignant tumors throbbed, now only a dull pulse. "Who are you?" "I am many." "What are you, many?" "I am the patron saints of wronged children, of the criers in the night, of the feeble-hearted." "I know of no dark saints, only those draped in white robes and wonky hats," Amy said, speculative now on the absorbing of her fear. "Saints are many, as am I many. They come in shapes human and shapes demon," said the silhouette, stretching each word in a slow drawl. "Why are you here?" Amy asked, her terror coming back to her with the realization that she was talking to a demon. Demons killed people. Demons were bad. She pulled her blanket, toppling her toys down to her chin, and shivered within. "You were wronged, child. You were crying, were you not?" said the shadow as it crept closer, carrying his blackness with him, snuffing out the lamps on Amy's bedside tables. Everyone's been super mean to me. My dad, the kids at school." She intended to say, but said only this. "Yes." "I ask you this, child Amy, and I ask this once. What do you want?" Amy traced her finger around the cigarette burn on her arm. She did not say anything right away, but after one long silence, she said, "I wish they all die," in the overdramatic tone that kids often take when they say things such as, "I hate you, we're never talking again," or "I love you so much I could go and grab the moon for you," or "I wish they'd all die." "If that's what will bring you comfort, then so be it," the silhouette said, and took leave, evaporating, dark wisps and all, into nothingness, leaving the girl wondering what about the realness of what she had just witnessed. Silence enveloped the night. Her parents had stopped calling out. Amy slept in her bed, dreaming about Patricia McKean chasing down a never-ending corridor of lockers and classroom doors. Her boyfriend and his dog were closing in from the front. She wept as she dreamed and wished ill upon the haunters of her dream. She dreamed of the dark place, of the silhouette, whatever nonsense both were. She dreamed of clowns in sewers and of dark creatures in closets. Three girls, with their chins resting on their propped-up hands, faced each other while they lay on their stomachs, dressed in their pajamas, stared down at an iPad as it showed them the final episode of Creepier Things. This was the 16th time they were watching it. Not Patricia, though. She had watched the show 20 times, and she meant not to tell it to her friends. They'd think she had gone behind their backs, which she had, but what they did not know wouldn't hurt them. It was her iPad, after all, and she could watch on it whatever, wherever, whenever. The Demogorgon was coming for the kids. The black boy was shooting rocks at the monster. The lights were flickering, and the demon became increasingly menacing the closer he got. The girls gasped and shuddered at its sight, with its Venus flytrap mouth and its charred, grisly body. "Girls!" called Mrs. McKean from above, and they heard her coming down the basement stairs. She checked up on them. A lot. It was almost intrusive of her. "Girls, it's nearly 12 now. I need you to shut the lights off and go to sleep." "God, Mom, what would be the point of this sleepover then?" Patricia, vexed, tapped at the pause button on the screen and sat upright to face her mother. She chucked her iPad away and watched it fall on the sofa with a thump. "Don't take that tone with me, young girl," her mother said. She was not going to take any crap from her daughter, or her friends for that matter. They were having too many sleepovers ever since that damn TV show aired. Twice a week, Patricia would go over to her friends, and on every Saturday night, they would come over. Mrs. McKean worried about her daughter. She was only 12, but already she had begun growing distant in that way adults do with one another, keeping to herself, not talking much, and once, oh dear God, once Mrs. McKean had caught her kissing Neil Wilkins. "But you're only 12, she had protested, and in return her daughter had given her this look, this frenzied stare, which scared her. "I'll kill you, Mom," the look had said. And the worst part was, Mrs. McKean knew that Patricia would kill her if given the tools, the time, and the proper motive. And so, she had decided to allow Patricia to kiss her boyfriend, but nothing else, she had said. And she had allowed her daughter to go to her friends for summer parties. If that's what they were really doing. But, thankfully, the other two girls' mothers shared Mrs. McKean's concern, and thus a coven of housewives came into existence, meeting each other at Sunday brunches and the parents' council at the school, and at ladies' night out at the local pub. Their children were the topic of their discussions, and sometimes their husbands, and their apathy and lack of involvement in raising the kids. The coven of mothers swore to keep watch on the girls during their sleepovers. It was the least they could do. In the end, children grew up overnight into all-knowing adults, and there was nothing you could do about it. Tonight was Mrs. McKean's turn to keep watch on the girls, and after seeing that they were doing the same thing they did every single sleepover, she breathed easy, went back up, called the other mothers, and let them know everything was okay. "Geez, what's your mom's deal?" Helen, one of the other two girls, asked. "Stick up her butt. She thinks she's on to us and we're doing something we're not supposed to be," Patricia said. "Like what?" Tish, the second of the other two girls, asked. "Like, I don't know. Like, I think all our moms think we're lesbians," Patricia whispered snidely. "Ew, you're damn right, ew." "Play the episode." But Patricia did not. Her mind was wandering off into the past, to earlier when the three of them had cornered Amy and beat her senseless. "Reckon we should be Amy again?" Patricia asked her friends. "Once was enough, though, wasn't it? I don't think she's going to go behind our backs and ask Miss Nellie to put her on the cheerleading squad," Tish said. I think we broke her good, Helen said, smiling. Neil said he sicked his dog on her, said it bit her ankles. Patricia said, wondering if there was any truth to the statement or if it was just her boyfriend trying to impress her. Pat, so why are you even going out with that guy? Helen asked. It made no sense. Pat's was pretty and popular. Neil was ugly and a loner, and quite big for his age. He kisses really good, Patricia said, sternly in an I don't want to talk about it tone. He did other stuff really good too, but that was between her and him. Certainly not for discussion amidst friends and family. Get the iPad. I want to see the rest of it, Helen said. Shut up, would you? Patricia's mood had gone sour the minute her relationship was put under scrutiny. She wanted them to get out, go back home. But she could not say any of that to their faces now, could she? Without her henchwoman, she'd have to deal with a lot of stuff at school which she could usually avoid. Various company. Casting her bitterness aside, with much difficulty, Patricia stood up, went to the sofa to grab the iPad, and found that it was not there. What the hell? She whispered, looking for the tablet. She could not find it anywhere. Not under the couch, not in between those slit spaces between the cushions, and not even behind it. Strange. Guys, you said I placed the iPad here, right? She asked with trepidation. Yeah. What of it? Don't tell me you can't find it, Tish moaned. Shut up. Let me find it, Patricia commanded. The two girls promptly stood up, ruffled their pajamas straight, and began looking under pillows, under the sofa, in the bookshelves. No luck. This is ridiculous, Patricia said, and then it hit her. Her mother had come down. She had taken it. Yeah, that was what had happened. Steaming with anger, red in the face, she stomped up the stairs to confront her mother and tell her to mind her own freaking business. Puberty makes you feel like you're on top of the world, an unstoppable force, a concoction of confused emotions, raging hormones, and a wrecking ball of swinging moods. She'd only taken 4 steps up the basement stairs when the lights flickered. She paused, turned around to look at her friends. They flickered again. The lights. Just like they had flickered in the episode they were just watching. Flickering lights bode evil. What's happening? Tish asked, coming close to Helen and holding her hand. Dunno, Patricia said, and retreated down the stairs, her rage at her mother replaced by fear. Pats? Look, whispered Helen as she pointed to the sofa. The iPad had been there all along. They had not seen it. How could they not? Each of them wondered. Patricia ran to it and made to pick it up in her hands, but the minute she touched it, the tablet scalded her hands, burning them a shade crimson. A rare steak, madam. Bon appetit. A scream welled up inside her throat, brought on by the pain and the realization that her tablet, which had cost her 6 months of saving money, had gone up in smoke. But it was decided quickly in the face of a new horror unfolding in front of her. Her friends had already retreated, screaming towards the basement door, but she stood, rendered transfixed at the morphing mass in front of her. The iPad melted and became one with the sofa. Red velveteen cushions and pillows turned crimson, turned maroon, turned black, grew flesh, oozed slime, and came to life. Behind, as the two girls scattered up the stairs and to the door, an unseen force pushed them down the steps. They rolled, collided, hit their heads, and fell into the flickering basement. When the barometer of fear goes past a certain point, screaming, crying, pleading, and thoughts of making run for it, like rats aboard a ship, leave you. And this is what had happened to the girls. The 3 stood, docile, and stared at the insidious wonder come to life in front of their eyes. Where there was a sofa now stood a 12-feet-high Demogorgon, with its clawed hands, its rotting flesh, and its Venus flytrap of a mouth. The monster opened it and bared its millions of fangs, and looked at them with his black, beady eyes. "This is not possible, this is not possible, this is not possible, this is not real," repeated Patricia in her mind, trying to make this hallucination disappear, helplessly grasping at the strands of fleeting rationality. But this was no hallucination, she learned in her last moments. The Demogorgon pincered its claw through her, gutting out her entrails, and with its nightmarish mouth, it chopped off her head, devouring it whole. The two remaining girls found control of their legs again and ran back to the stairs, the monster in chase. Helen screamed so hard that her vocal cords, like rubber bands when you pull them too hard, snapped in her throat, leaving her gasping voicelessly. She hammered her hands on the door, praying that Mrs. McKean would come and somehow make this all okay, make it all go away. But there came no Mrs. McKean or any of the adults to her rescue, and Helen watched as the Demogorgon, the beast from the recesses of hell, hacked into Tish. Poor girl did not even scream. Done with the carcass at the second kill, the Demogorgon looked up at Helen, its last victim. "Why are you doing this?" she thought, because she could not speak. "Child beater," came a deep drawl in reply. She knew what the monster meant. She knew it was talking about Amy. She knew, and then she knew no more. In her last moments, long after all thought had absconded, she heard Mrs. McKean hammering her hand on the door, asking Patricia if everything was okay. She beat and rapped and pushed the door open from the other side. The Demogorgon killed the last of the three girls and suckled at her torn neck, consuming her blood, taking her soul for its own, just like it had done to the other two. Angerfloof, Neil's bulldog, was barking wildly in the backyard. Something had gotten into the dog since that afternoon. Ever since it had bitten that nerd girl's ankle. Did she carry rabies or something? Neil thought. It would explain a whole lot of stuff if she did. "You shut that dog up or I'll put him down, boy," his father, Charles Wilkins, said. He was a man with thin patience and the worst drinking habit on the block. They were all eating dinner. His mother sat to his right, not remotely interested in the barking or her husband's banter that it led to. "Dad," Neil began, but his father's glaring stare made him stop. He paused eating his food, got it from his chair, silently pushed it back in, and walked out of the house. If there was one thing that Neil was really afraid of on God's green earth, it was his father. His drunk father, more precisely. What is more pitiful than a child who fears the man who is supposed to love him and tell him it's going to be alright, kiddo? Neil crept out through the back door and looked for Angerfloof. He was barking, sure, but where was he? He was not in the kennel, and where was he tied to the chrome chain? "Angerfloof, come here, boy," he called to his dog, wondering where in the hell he had disappeared off to, and where his barking was coming from. It seemed to be resonating from all around him, from inside his head even. "Angerfloof, Dad's gonna blow your brains out if you don't quit it, boy," Neil said. There had been times when the dog had gotten out of control. His dad had, so far, kicked, punched, and even whipped the dog. The barking stopped and was replaced by a whimper, slow and painful. The dog came to Neil from behind a clump of bushes in the backyard, his mouth foaming, and in it, Angerfloof held a kicking and squirming toad. A fat toad. But that wasn't it. The toad's mouth was closed around Angerfloof's nostril. "Jesus, boy," Neil said, and immediately dropped to his knees in front of the helpless dog. When he tried to pull the toad off, Angerfloof growled. "Stay, boy," Neil said, and kept trying to pull apart the toad's wedged mouth. The dog, in protest, in pain, thrashed and whimpered, but Neil did not stop until the writhing toad was off. Angerfloof had bit it good and deep, and as Neil had held the wrangle thing, he could feel his entrails leak out from the dog-sized bite holes in the dying toad. Neil put it down on the grass, stood up, and stomped it thrice to put it out of its misery. It squeaked its last croak, and then it was no more. Only a toad-shaped splatter on the ground. Angerfloof looked happy. It licked the foam away from its muzzle as if saying to Neil, "Chill, master, this is not rabies." "Let's take you for a walk, huh, boy? Walk off that bad flavor in your mouth, eh, boy? You like that?" Neil smiled as he saw his dog turn from its forlorn mood into its tail-wagging mood. Angerfloof's tongue, with some toad remains still sticking on it, hung out, panting. But thankfully, there was no fresh foam coming out of his mouth. Neil put the leash around Angerfloof and opened the fence gate to let himself and the dog through. It was only 9 o'clock in the night, so he thought it would be okay if he went to the walking track in the park. It was only a block away. There was a nice little fountain in the middle of it, and a pool surrounding it where you could chuck pennies and make a wish. Neil thought it was very cool, but you would never hear him admit it. The walking track was in the shape of an 8, and that was another cool thing too. The thicket of trees at the far end of it was where Neil and Patricia had first done it. Just second base though. Actually doing it was out of the question. It daunted the crap out of them both. It was also the place where he sneaked off to smoke a cigarette once or twice. He saw his father imitate a chimney for all his life, and it made him wonder what that was all about. Neil did not like them, cigarettes. He'd never get him to admit this either. What you could get him to admit was how cool it was when he sicked his dog on Amy. Yeah, that was some classy stuff, man. And he would tell you all about it. Neil and Angerfloof were in the park, and oddly, it was abandoned. This unnerved him a little, but only a little. The front park gates was still open, and the lamps were all lit, casting ominous shadows of trees and bushes, making them look like Ryuk from Death Note. He'd never get Neil to admit that he'd watched that gay anime stuff, but he did. The kid was as soft on the inside as hard as he acted on the outside. "Go on, boy," Neil said to Angerfloof and tugged at the leash as he headed for the thickets. They were close by, so why the hell not? And besides, it was a familiar place. But Angerfloof would not budge. In fact, he started barking like crazy, and growling in between barks, mouth foaming again, and tugged at his leash, freeing himself from it. Angerfloof ran towards the thicket with Neil at his heels. "Boy, come down," Neil said and ran, all out of breath after his dog. And then his dog disappeared into the clump of trees, and a moment later, a shrill whimper resounded, and then silence. Fearing the worst, Neil went after his now scarily quiet dog, and shone his cell phone's light in the confines of bark and bushes. It froze him with fear, his dog's sudden quietness. And the whimper, it sounded so painful. He walked down into the middle of the trees, where there was a clearing, and in the midst of the clearing, his dog, dead and shot in the head. "I told you, Neil. Shut the damn critter up or I shut him for ya." His father stood with his hunter's rifle, his eyes red, his breath stinking of whiskey. "You killed him!" Neil yelled. "You killed him!" "You're damn right I did. Dogs that bite little girls deserve to be put down," said his father. But strange enough, his father started to change, to move and morph from a plaid shirt wearing, balding, angry man to a purple darkness with spikes jutting out of his back. His eyes became snake-like, and he gained in height. Dad? I'm afraid Dad isn't here. Dad's left. Dad's dead. Your dog's dead. You're next, cackled the reptilian horror. The silhouette and the shape of his worst fear approached Neil. He meant to run. He meant to turn back and go back to his real dad, the one who was bad on his best days, but not this bad. The last thing Neil remembered doing was peeing his pants. And then came the vicious claw of the reptile as it slashed his neck in two. The boy and his dog lay dead in the woods, and would be found 9 hours later by a morning jogger who thought he smelled something funny. Riker had the sorest infection in a place where you'd rather not feel anything except feelings of relief. It burned a snail trail of pain through his nether regions all the way to his bladder. Every minute was agony. And on top of it, his non-understanding wife had given him hell today, for the third time in a row. She was okay on most days, except when she was in one of her inexplicable mood swings. Tonight they had the worst fight in the history of their marriage, and she had promised that she would leave for her mother's first thing in the morning. Right now, she slept in bed beside him, their fight finally at pause. But don't even get him started on Amy. When he came home, tired from his 9-hour guard shift at the mall, he saw her crying in the living room. Again. Girl, you better shut your trap or tell me why you're crying, for God's sake, he said, inebriated by a hangover and tiredness. The cigarette he was going to snuff out on her arm was still in his mouth when he had come in. Girl, he said, massaging his temple with one hand. With the other, he was scratching his groin. He looked like a gorilla doing that. He could not get words out of her, even after trying a few more times. He had never been good at this stuff, and frankly, he did not care. Little children should be able, just as any adults, to fight their own battles, whether they be at the school or gym practice afterward. So she got bullied. Boo-hoo! So she had a bleeding ankle and red graze marks all over her thighs and calves. Rub some dirt on it. Tears don't come cheap, princess. It's your blood that you're wasting. Tell me what's your plight or get the hell out of my sight. In another life, in which he had finished school and gone to college, Riker would have been a poet. She did not say anything. This made him angry. A lot of things made him angry, but muteness in the face of inquiry topped them all. Tell me what happened. Tell me who did it. Come clean. It's not so hard, is it? It is. Riker knew, even though the girl's mother had taken her to the doctor and confirmed otherwise, that Amy had autism. She did not say anything. Instead, got off the couch, still crying, still bleeding, and made for her bedroom. Any other father would have melted at the sight of her distress, but not Riker. You come back here, you, and tell me what's wrong, he said, and gripped her arm. Let me go, she screamed. He slapped her across the face with the back of his hand. Shut up! Where the hell do you think you're going, bleeding across the floor? You gonna tell me you did it? You gonna man up? He screamed. Let me go! You little... Words were not enough to convey his anger, and so he took the cigarette out of his mouth and brought it down on the frail forearm he had in his grasp. She screamed again, and this time, for some strange and perverted reason, it satisfied him. Hell, it even made his headache better. He probed the cigarette deeper into her forearm, making her scream louder, and took in that smell of flesh and tobacco burning. And now it looked like karma was paying him back. His infection sent knives slicing across his groin. Riker got up from his bed and went to the bathroom to take a leak. He already knew it was going to be a painful leak. What he didn't know was that he'd never come out of the bathroom alive. As he went across the corridor, he put an ear to Amy's door. Good, he thought, listening to the absence of sobbing and crying. She's learned her lesson. It was that, or she had gone to sleep. But at 9 o'clock in the night, it was early for her. He wanted to open the door and check up on her, but then the barrage holding his pee inside him nearly gave way, and he rushed to the bathroom instead. Under the dim glow of the yellow bulb, he took off his pants and aimed for the pool of stagnant water in the commode. Drip, drip, go. It's not that painful, he registered, and with relief and a sigh, he craned his neck up and closed his eyes. It came out of nowhere, all at once, this new brand of pain, the kind of which he had never felt nor heard about. It was like the entire inside of his body was being sucked into a vortex, everything displacing and banging against each other. He gasped and looked down and saw that instead of urine, he was peeing blood all this time. And he, no matter how hard he pinched or tried to contract his bladder, could not stop it. It flowed of its own accord, thick, sludgy, and dark red. Oh, dear God! He screamed and clasped his hands on his groin, but the blood pee did not stop. It flowed over and against his hands. This was no use. He let go of the bleeding faucet and just stood there, with shock from blood loss starting to affect him, and watching as the toilet bowl filled to the brim with his blood. Oh God, he said bleakly one last time, his legs giving way. He fell face first towards the bowl, but somehow mustered just about enough strength to put his hands in front of him. Riker was now bent in front of the commode, holding its sides like a hungover man on a Saturday morning after a Friday night frat party. The pool of blood rippled, and out came, slowly, a balding head of red hair, and then a set of eyes, merciless, and finally, a pale face of a sinister, menacing clown emerged. Riker had read about it when he was a kid, and it always found its way into his nightmares, even now. He had to be dreaming now, right? Hiya, Rikey! Crikey, what a mess, am I right? Hey, you want a balloon? I'll tell you what, Riker, old sport. Come with me, don't ya? I heard you like burning kids and long silences. There's a ton of that and a lot more floating down here, the clown said and revealed a set of shark teeth. They grabbed Riker by his ears and pulled him down. He would have resisted or screamed, but he had no strength left to do any of that. And so, going along with the clown's grip, Riker drowned in the pool of blood. And when in the morning his wife came to see him like that, it struck her as funny. When the cops broke the toilet bowl, they found it funny. Riker's head was stuck in the bend of the toilet, but it was impossible for it to be stuck like that. But it was. No one saw the pool of blood, though. They only saw a middle-aged man who, in their opinion, had come up with the most creative idea for a suicide yet. Amy woke up from her sleep and she heard the groans of her stepfather, and she heard the splashes he made in his last moments. Instead of going out to see what was happening, she turned to her side in bed and closed her eyes, smiling. It is done, child Amy. The silhouette emerged in the same corner where it had shown itself before. Are all dead? All dead. Thank you, Minnie. The silhouette came closer to her, and this time, it sat beside her bed, intimately close to her. But she was not scared. She patted him on the head and was surprised when her hand did not pass through smoke, but touched hair. Human hair. Underneath those many layers of smoke and shadow, there was a person in there. Minnie made to leave, having seen the girl's wish completed. But as he left, Amy grabbed his arm. Surprised, Minnie turned back and looked at her. No one had done this for Amy before. There were others, in other worlds, but children whom he came to in their darkest hour of their lives. They never did this. "Take me with you," Amy said. "Where?" "Neverland, Wonderland, Narnia, Middle-earth, wherever, just not here," she said. "Child, I am not from any of those," Minnie replied, surprised at her request. Generally, he stopped ever fulfilling one wish, but he can make an exception this one time, he guessed. "And take me there, where you are from, Minnie," Amy said, and held tighter to the silhouette's hand. After much contemplation and a stretched silence, Minnie took the girl in his arms, as a friend would, and walked back to the dark corner where once he had come, and they disappeared, girl in silhouette, in the darkness. The girl would never be seen again, but every once in a while, when a child was roughed up by bullies, Minnie would visit that child and ask him or her what they wanted. No one, save for this girl, had ever asked him to serve death to the abusers. Mostly they just wanted new toys or new books, trivial things. But tonight, for the first time in his life, he had lived a long one, the silhouette had fun. He left a field day for cops, sure, but he had fun.